So North Korea detonated a bomb, and it was 8 times as large as the bomb used at Hiroshima and Nagasaki in World War II. It was on Sunday, and there was a UN Security Council meeting. Now, this is obviously a serious thing. They've done this in the past. They're detonating a big bomb, but this article in the LA Times doesn't go into, and I've talked about this, The Intercept has covered this, and I've talked about it, is how we keep provoking. We just did we keep provoking North Korea. We act like we're just innocently hanging out and North Korea is crazy and they're exploding stuff. Now, North Korea is, of course, he's proving to be crazy. But as I said in the report that came out in The Intercept, there's been 2 times where North Korea has said, we'll pull back if America stops flexing its muscles in our backyard. We'll pull back. But we don't want to do that because it's all war, war, war. Right? And our the U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, boy, she's all about the war. She wants this war ramped up. She wants to go. She said this: his abusive use of missiles and his nuclear threat shows that he is begging for war. No, Nikki, you and Trump and the military-industrial complex are begging for war. Just to be clear, you guys are begging for war. All right, Nikki? If I started, a bunch of big tough guys all started doing shooting range on your street in front of your house, wouldn't you be like, what are these guys doing? And then if you were like, okay, then I'm going to start loading my weapons. And we went, oh, Nikki Haley's crazy. She's begging for war. You'd be like, what the hell are you talking about? You're loading your weapons on my front yard. So it just shows you, too, the corporate war machine is in all aspects of the media. The mainstream media is not going to mention how there is path to peace to just settle North Korea down. Why are we provoking this lunatic, right? So Trump, of course, did a tweet on September 3rd. The United States is considering, in addition to other options, stopping all trade with any country doing business in North Korea. Again, more Trump and his dummies thinking that we are the big, powerful nation. So China does 80% of North Korea's trade, and they do a lot of trade with us. So if China just decides they don't want to trade with us, now they need us to buy a lot of their products, obviously, but new markets are opening up. China is preparing for this. That's why they're spending all this money on infrastructure in Africa. That's why they're doing business in India, because they're like, look, there's 1 billion people in India. Why do we need America's 300 million people if they're a bunch of idiots who voted for a jackass who thinks America controls the whole world? So it's more short-sightedness. And it's like, this is what Nikki Haley said: the United States will look at every country that does business with North Korea as a country that is giving aid to their reckless and dangerous nuclear intentions. And also, China holds veto power in the Security Council. And as I said, they account for 80% of North Korea's trade and is the U.S. largest trading partner. So we're just going to make these crazy threats. The test on Sunday was North Korea's 6th and most powerful to date and the first since Trump took office. The device had an estimated explosive yield of 120 kilotons. All right, that's no joke. That's no joke. But how did this happen? We've just been peaceful and nice with North Korea, and then he just does this out of nowhere. This is this classic thing of just like insulting someone and pushing, poking their chest at them, and they finally knock you out. You go, oh, they're violent and crazy. How did this happen? It's insane. They also, North Korean media, which loves saying crazy propaganda shit, just like our media, said the test was a perfect success. They also described the bomb as a multifunctional thermonuclear nuke with great destructive power, which can be detonated at even high altitudes for super powerful EMP attack. That's an electromagnetic pulse. So that's obviously a threat. They're saying we could just detonate this somewhere and knock out your grid and you'll be in the dark. Right? That's a real threat. That's a real threat. This is the 10th time the Security Council has met on North Korea this year, and the 2nd time in less than a week, according to Jeffrey Feltman, Undersecretary for Political Affairs. The most recent found in North Korea's August 28th launch of a missile over Japan. In no mention here is our war games that we do with South Korea, except this spot, right? They're talking about sanctions and the UN, August 5th, they approved security sanctions. So we keep making them more poor and more poor, and then we keep threatening them with our military force, which if I was, it's small. If a bunch of big dudes were working out in front of me, looking at my house going, gee, Graham, I would be like, oh, I guess I should sharpen my katana because these lunatics look like they want to kick in my door and beat the crap out of me. It's like if a bunch of UFC heavyweight fighters were all just like training in front of my house. Hey, Graham, still acting weird? I'd be like, now I am. This is a good comment here. We are in a downward spiral that I find very worrisome, said Joseph De Thomas, a professor at Pennsylvania State University and a contributor to 38 North, a respected North Korea monitoring website. This is what the dynamic that took us into World War I looks like. There needs to be some credible voice that shows up with an alternative. We're going to stumble into something bad. Well, Jonathan, Joseph, we're not stumbling. We are forcing a fight. We are forcing a fight. And it's amazing that he brings up World War I. Because again, I've referenced this before from Death of the Liberal Class. Hedges talks about everyone, the corporations were trying to get us into World War I. And America, I didn't know this, most Americans were calling it a Wall Street's war. In World War I, 1913, 1914, around there, we're calling it Wall Street's war, and we didn't want to get into it. So then a big propaganda machine was put in place by Woodrow Wilson, by Creel, and it got America to, we got to go do something, and the Kaiser is evil, the Kaiser is evil. And that's how America got into war, and that's how we sent 1 million young men who died in trench warfare. My grandfather served in World War I, but luckily he was stationed in England. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be here. So this is what we're doing. We are forcing the issue. We are forcing the issue. We could diffuse this very easily. Theodore Roosevelt, right? Was it walk softly and carry a big stick? They know how much military force we have. They know we could wipe them out. We could just say, hey, we could resolve this, but we don't want to. The UN sanctions, this is from Joshua Stanton, a Washington-based attorney and North Korea sanctions expert. The U.S. sanctions have always required member states to reinforce them. China's violations of sanctions have been so consistent and so flagrant they only can be the result of a deliberate policy of non-enforcement. Yeah, because they're tired of our bullshit. The Trump administration is also moving to cut off from the international financial system Chinese banks and trading companies that supply North Korea. However, those cases are moving slowly because of the hiring freeze at the State Department and personnel shortages at the Justice and Treasury Department, according to Stanton. Man, here's the thing. I've talked about this. I did an article on a video on this. Both China and Russia are pushing a proposal called suspension for suspension. This is the third to last article, paragraph in this article. So this is the thing we talk about the corporate media in America. When they do mention something, they bury it. The headline says, North Korean leader is begging for war, Nikki Haley tells UN Security Council. That's the headline. North Korea guy's begging for war. It doesn't mention until the third to last paragraph that most people are probably not going to read that China and Russia are pushing for a proposal called suspension for suspension, in which North Korea would freeze its weapon program in exchange for reduced U.S. and South Korean military exercises. They've said, we'll stop the nukes. We won't blow them up. We'll suspend it. We'll get rid of it. Just stop doing exercises right in front of us. And Russia and China, who are like, we don't want a war in our backyard. We don't want nuclear fallout. We don't want the American Navy flooding right off of our shores. Yes, we're proposing this. Without mentioning China and Russia by name, Haley spoke sharply against the proposal, which she called insulting. When a rogue regime has a nuclear weapon and an ICBM pointed at you, you don't take steps to lower your guard. No one would do that. We certainly won't. War, 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 war. That's all they're pushing for. That's all they want. That's all the military-industrial complex, which controls both parties, which controls this country, which is not a representative democracy. It's a kleptocracy and it's an oligarchy. This is what they want. They want war. They are pushing us into a war with North Korea. email all of your representatives and say this is nuts. Say, why don't you propose on the Senate floor and at the House and at the Congress that we want to support the suspension for suspension proposal by China and Russia. Do that. Do that. Because war's bad for everybody. And if many of you vets who watch the show have thanked me for bringing this up, because I don't want to see more vets come home in flag draped coffins with prosthetic limbs and PTSD. I don't want to see those things. I don't want the 22 vets a day commit suicide. I don't want that number to increase because we're now back to 150,000 troops in Afghanistan and we've got another 100,000 in the Korean Peninsula. I don't want to see that. I'm tired of it. And if you're tired too, take some action. Contact your local representatives, contact your senators and congresspeople, and also get behind progressives who are vehemently anti-war. I'm done with this. Cut the military budget in half, start a Green New Deal, put Americans to work cleaning the environment and making the world a safer place, stop bombing civilians in the Middle East, which creates more terrorists, and stop provoking little lunatics like this. This is a guy with a Napoleon complex and has a couple of bombs. They want to come to peace. Nikki Haley, you're a warmonger. Are you happy? If you have children, Nikki Haley, I hope they are lining up for war right now. I hope you're making sure they all enlist and that they're all grunts, not officers. They don't get to go to special officer candidate school and go to Yale, and then their daddy makes them stay home from Vietnam and not have to go to Vietnam like Bush's daddy did. You know, crap like that. They're not draft dodgers like Howard Dean and John Wayne. I want your kids, Nikki Haley, to go on the front lines. If they're 18 years old, I want them to enlist as grunts in the Marine Corps, not officers, and I want them to say, I want to go to war to North Korea because my mom is pushing for it with the UN Security Council. I hope you could do that for me, Nikki Haley, because I'd really like to see that happen, because I got 6 nieces and nephews, ages 18 to 10, and I don't want to see them go to war. I've seen it as a comedian, and just seeing on the sidelines as a comedian. I don't like it. It's awful. It ruins everything.